Okay, guys, here is our presentation for you today on William Faulkner. You're reading Barn Burning this week. And William Faulkner was born in 1897 and he passed in 62. He is, again, another contemporary, and as you know, from around Mississippi. Some background information just to set the scene of some of his writing. It's the South. Which is basically made up of Virginia, Carolina, Missouri, Georgia, Alabama. They have lots of similar geographical features, accent, race, climate, similar ideology and culture. Agriculture, as you know, is a big part of these settings, main support of the Southern economy, such as planting tobacco, cotton, rice. Slavery is one of the darkest sides of the South. We've talked about a lot. Owner of these large plantations, we're going to see this in Barn Burning, and the Civil War, the beginning, the end. The conservative and proud white in the South had to face the reality that they were attached to their past glory. Thus, in the American South, Southern literature, the strong, tragic sense can be found. So the literary scene. So this is what we've kind of gone over so far. 18th century, we looked at the historical documents of like Thomas Jefferson. We moved on to the 19th century, looking at the Gothic South with Mark Twain, realism. And in the 20th century, we have Faulkner, people like O'Connor, Natasha Trethewey, and William Faulkner is very well known as being kind of a Southern Renaissance man. The popular novel Gone with the Wind and later African-American writers came about in the contemporary era. So William Faulkner, we're going to talk about his works, his analysis, and what types of settings, characterizations, and plots that he uses in his works. So he was born to a Southern family with fairly long tradition. His great-grandfather, a legendary character and leader of the regiment in the Civil War. The family history was partly used by Faulkner in his novels. So he's raised in a small town, later used as the background in his novels named Yoknapatawpha County, which is a made-up county, but it's based off of his own small town. So he didn't attend regular school, but he read a lot. He was eager to join World War I, but the war was over when he still trained. He studied at the University of Mississippi only 1 year and then took some jobs. With the help of Sherwood Anderson, he published his first novel. However, he was not widely recognized in the U.S., though in Europe he was highly praised by some famous writers such as Sartre. He used stream of consciousness, which was also something that James Joyce had been using in the early 1920s, and he was praised for that. So in the late 1940s, with recommendations by the famous critic Malcolm Coley, Faulkner's works were gradually recognized in the U.S., and he eventually won the Nobel Prize. So some of his famous novels, he wrote 19 novels, lots of short stories. Most famous that you've probably heard of is The Sound of the Fury and As I Lay Dying. They're very interesting, and they have very specific settings. Again, we have the Yoknapatawpha County, typical Southern small town. The characters are very vivid. They enjoy the complicated state with little interference. They are like flesh and blood type of people. They stand up and cast a shadow. The plot is most about history of the American South, its rise, fall, glory, and all the evil sides. And, of course, those family ties are in there, which we're going to see with Barn Burning. Themes, we're going to see lots of love, pity, honor, self-sacrifice. Faulkner thought that the doom of the South was caused by ill treatment of Indians and blacks, and the way to change that meaninglessness modern life is recovering the traditional and eternal values. So his point of view is really, really interesting. You see that a lot now, and kind of Faulkner was one of the first to play around with this, is multiple points of view and unreliable narrators. So basically every chapter might be a different character. The reader should make judgments through analysis, so he kind of leaves it up to the reader. We have this fallible and unreliable narrator. Perception, interpretation, and evaluation made by the narrator do not coincide with the opinions and norms implied by the author. So even though his characters may believe one thing that is not necessarily what Faulkner believes himself. So you should judge for your own. His style, he varies from the colloquial and the dialect to formal and refined. So that means that he writes with kind of a southern drawl and uses language that is the vernacular of the South. So sometimes it's hard to understand because of using modern techniques such as his stream of consciousness. He can go in lots of directions, and we see that with Sardi. So in barn burning, I wanted you to kind of think about these two theories. We have the Apollonian man and the paranoid man, and I want you to decide kind of which characterizes Sardi and Abner. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that means. The Ruth Benedict's description of two major patterns of culture provide an advantageous starting point for a discussion of the way in which Faulkner develops content of barn burning. The paranoid way of life, she comments, has no political organization. In a strict sense, it has no legality. As a consequence of the paranoid man's adherence to this lifestyle, he is lawless and is feared as a warrior who will hesitate at no treachery. In such culture, every man's hand is against every other man. And as a result, each man relies upon blood ties to form social alliances and to sanction his actions. So the Apollonian man, on the other hand, keeps to the middle of the road, stays within the known map, he follows the rules, and strives to fulfill his civic role in terms of the expectations of the community at large. Men in the community and its collected wisdom as it is embodied in the law for the approval of their actions and for their security. Thus, the sanction for man's acts comes from the formal structure, not the individual, from the community, not the blood kin. So in barn burning, Faulkner develops the ideas contained in these descriptions of dissimilar lifestyles in a way which creates a central tension in the story and keeps constantly before the reader. The reader is made aware of the pervasiveness of Sardi's terror and the grief, the being pulled in two ways, like between two teams of horses. So again, just to kind of clarify what that means, the Apollonian man cares about himself, and he doesn't really necessarily believe in following the rules or the laws of society. I'm sorry, the paranoid man. And the Apollonian man does care. The Apollonian man wants to follow the rules. And so decide which one is which. Sardi, an Apollonian man who wants to do what is right, is Abner, the paranoid man, who is going to be the lone wolf. Okay, I hope you enjoy barn burning. If you have any questions, please let me know.